Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of CIE, 2025 CIE, actually. I am your host once again, Zlion, and today we have the BMO Financial Literacy panel, which I'm super excited for, and I'm joined by the lovely Sean Frame. And let's start off
Hello.
with a little bit of introduction, Sean, if you can tell everyone what you do, as well as what title on BMO Next Level was your favorite to grind.
Yeah, so my name is Sean. I am the gaming relations specialist over at BMO. I've been in this role for 3 years as of today. Actually, 3 year anniversary is today, which is pretty exciting. And the
Woo!
core of my job is to play video games, stream on Twitch, and teach financial literacy while doing such. And it's been a lot of fun. I've been with BMO for 8 years. A little bit of background on me: I have a journalism background, so I went to school for journalism and broadcasting and all that kind of stuff, and started working at the bank and a radio station right out of college, and then fell in love with finances and all that kind of stuff, and the rest is history. So it's been fun. I have probably the coolest job at the bank. I think I would say. My colleagues always tell me that because I get to play video games for a bank, which is
Mm-hmm.
unheard of. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Definitely fun stuff. And the way you got the position too, when we were talking off stream, was really interesting too. Like, did you need any? This is like complete off topic right now, but did you need
That's all
any
right.
experience with like gaming at all, or was just kind of like go
Yeah, for
for it?
sure. I mean, I don't know if you could tell, like I'm a pretty big gamer already. I've been gaming my entire life. So BMO was looking for gamers that were also bankers that already work for the company to come and stream for them. So there was no requirement of like I didn't have to be the best player ever because if anyone has ever joined my streams, a lot of games I'm pretty subpar. I have my games that I'm good at, but there was no kind of prerequisite to be good at gaming, but
Hmm.
since I'm so knowledgeable and I play a variety of games, like I don't really like lock into one kind of genre. I'm
Hmm.
pretty open when it comes to video games. I think that was attractive for this position, being able to have like a vast knowledge of video games and a willingness to try things. Because actually, before this job, never played any sports titles. I think that's not true. I played like NHL Hits back in like 2003 or something like that, and all
Classic.
the
Okay.
Mario sports titles, of course. But
Uh-huh.
I got this job and I started playing EAFC, which I actually really enjoy now. It's not something I play on a daily basis, but when it comes time for, because we have a tournament every year, I usually start grinding on that. I'm
Hmm.
terrible at it, but still having a lot of fun. So
A jack of all trades, master of none, but that's all.
yeah.
That's what can you ask for that? But anyways, going back on topic, I'm super excited for this panel because just personally, it is a hobby of mine for personal finance. But for those of you who don't know what is personal finance, let's lay a little bit of groundwork there. So, Sean, what does it mean to be financial liberal? Like, what is personal finances?
Yeah. So being financially literate just means having the knowledge to better understand and effectively manage your money. So it kind of empowers you to make informed financial decisions. Um, being financially literate often falls upon like the individual. Now in Ontario, at least, there is actually part of like high school curriculum where you have to pass um, a financial literacy course. But the onus usually is upon the person to kind of learn. So it's kind of cool that they're doing that here in Ontario. But as far as like what personal finances are, it's such a wide topic, and it's one of those things where you could study it your whole life and still find new things kind of everywhere you go. From like budgeting, loans, home financing, investing. There's a lot of that goes into financial literacy and personal finances, and it can potentially be a struggle, but it's super important. I'm glad they're teaching it in schools now because it's super important because
I had no
everything you do
idea
in
that
life
was a
kind of
thing.
yeah, it actually starts this year. So as part of like grade 10 math in Ontario,
That's so
they will
good.
have to pass a financial literacy course, which is pretty cool.
would have been so useful back in high school, honestly,
Yeah.
because you're going
Oh
into
yeah.
like
Yeah.
your late teens, like early 20s into university, like maybe by yourself, and you don't know exactly what financial literacy is. You don't know what budgeting is. And when I think about financial literacy, like the first thing that comes to mind for me is budgeting. So, what are some tips for managing spending or creating a monthly budget, or make sure you stay within budget? I know there's a split. Some people say where you have your savings, your expenses, and then your fun money and emergency money. So how would you approach that, and how is that usually split, or you would recommend that being split as?
Yeah, budgeting's tricky. And I mean, the hardest thing about budgeting is getting started and knowing where to start. Once you get kind of in the rhythm of it, it's second nature. There's a lot of like apps you can kind of use to set it and forget it, which is really nice. The general rule of thumb, so the split is the 50-30-20 rule. So 50% of your income goes towards necessities, 30% goes towards wants, 20% goes towards savings. It's a general rule of thumb, but is it realistic that 50% of your income is going to necessities? No, it might be 80% of my income is going to necessities, and you kind of have to play around with the ratio at that point. But it's a good starting point. It's a good thing to kind of aim for too as you get out in the working world and start kind of earning your own income. You can kind of change it around. Getting started is difficult knowing how to get started. I use like an Excel sheet just because, I'm very much in the finance world, so I know what I'm looking for. But there are tools available. There's apps. One app that comes to mind that my wife used to use is called YNAB. You need a budget now, which you have to pay for. So it's a paid app. There are free apps. The government of Canada on Canada.ca has like a budget tool, which is really simple to
Mm,
use. It actually gives you tips. So when you're punching things in, it may say that, oh, you could potentially be saving more, or maybe you should pay down one of your credit cards to kind of get more into your savings ratios, and it'll kind of tailor it to your goal. For budgeting, one thing that I do personally that helps me, I find that I have to trick my brain a lot, especially when it comes to finances, because I'm very stuck in my ways. And the way that I trick my brain is that every time I get paid, so I kind of stick to the 50-30-20 rule. Every time I get paid, 20% of my income goes directly into my savings.
mhm.
That way, in the morning when I open my bank account and I see the money that's in my checking, that's the money I have to work with. So I've immediately kind of tricked my brain into thinking, okay, I don't have that money anymore because I've automatically kind of transferred it. And you can set that up anywhere
Mm.
where they automatically comes on a certain date, goes into another account. You could do that for loans as well. So
Mhm. And for daily expenditure, I think for me at least, when it comes to budgeting, when I think about available like finance or available kind of money I have, I think about the money in my bank account, but also at the same time, a lot of people make the mistake of, for credit cards, for example, thinking that, oh, that's free money, right? So when we
yeah.
talk about credit cards, like what are credit cards and how do you know what kind of credit card is actually suitable for you?
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that. And as we were kind of talking before about, this financial literacy course that's in high school, when I was 19 and 20, like I very much was that person who was like, I got free money all on this
Yeah.
card and I maxed out a credit card because I didn't understand how it worked.
Mhm.
And knowing that I would eventually pay it back plus some, because there is interest that accumulates on there. Very simply put, like credit cards are cards that allow you to use borrowed funds to make purchases, so you are borrowing that money. We kind of lose that idea of borrowing money because we're just tapping a card and kind of putting it in, spending it, and stuff like that. But knowing like what credit card is right for you, credit cards usually have a variety of different reward systems. If you're a student, there's student credit cards. Student credit cards are designed specifically to help you build and establish credit, because when you are a student, you're basically starting fresh. Unless you're like me and went to school later in life where you already kind of have a credit score, but you're basically starting fresh. So those could potentially be good options for students. But then there's things like, air miles, cashback, and it's all kind of suited to what your preference is. Like maybe you go air miles because you like to travel, and you travel a lot and
Mm.
you want to use your points accumulated on your credit card, because credit cards, every time you make a purchase, accumulate some sort of point system. If you want to make travel purchases, maybe air miles is the best option. Or if you like to have some extra cash to buy groceries, maybe cashback is the best option because it provides you a
Mm.
percentage on every dollar you spend. So choosing a credit card basically comes down to preference for students. Usually, they kind of default into the student credit cards, which also have rewards, by the way. But yeah, and I think it is pretty common for people when they get a credit card. At least it was for me to be like, I have all this money, I'm going to buy this and that and this and that, and sometimes it gets out of hand. But if you could manage it well and kind of budget your expenses on your credit card, like you're clear, and it'll help you build and establish credit, which is very important
Mhm.
later in life.
I feel like credit cards are like, especially when you're freshly 18, you're able to, and you go to like these club carousels for university that you're visiting. I know that like BMO, for example, they will set up a little booth and they'll introduce you to like student saving plans or checking accounts as well as credit card options, for example. But it's like a completely new world. So you're able to like, you can make a lot of mistakes just like with either paying back your credit card or even going beyond your credit card limit or doing
Hmm.
stuff like that. So what are the most common mistakes with credit cards that people would make, you would say?
Yeah, I think I can use myself as an example just because this was a mistake I made, and that was maxing out my credit card. Like
Mm,
it happens a lot, and sometimes when you're maxing out your credit card, it might not be a mistake. It might be you're in a really tough situation, and that's the only way you can kind of make purchases and stuff like that. But even when you're short on funds, like using your credit card and maxing it out, you end up paying a lot more for what you borrowed, especially if you maintain a balance. Because the way that it works is if I use my credit card and say I put $300 on it and I pay it back before the next statement date, I don't pay any interest on it, right? Another common mistake is cash advances. Thinking that cash advances are at the same interest rate as like just credit card purchases is incorrect, because usually cash advances, the money that you advance, has its own interest rate, and normally it's significantly higher. So if you're going to an
mm,
ATM pulling cash out of your credit account, you're actually.
mhm, 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 mhm. And for credit cards, at least like for me, actually within my oh, sorry, can you hear me? Hello? Sorry guys, just 1 second. Yes. My audio looks okay, I'm pretty sure. Little pause there, guys, 1 second. Yeah, I think I can hear you perfectly. Yeah. Mhm. We are gonna go on a quick little break, guys, as we try to figure this out, but we'll be right back, okay? So stay tuned. Give us like 2 minutes, all right? Hello, everybody. So sorry for the cut off there. A little bit of a PC crashing, but that's okay. It happens all the time. It's all right. But
Part of
anyways,
life.
yeah, part of life, honestly, and part of having your PC run all the time when you're doing Level level 2. So I'm sure your PC was working overtime. But anyways,
Yeah.
going back to the credit card conversation, for me, I think the biggest confusion amongst people within my age group or within my friend group at least was, do I pay back my credit card? Is it better to pay off your credit card the minute you've made an expenditure, or is it better to pay it off when the statements come out? Like, is there a difference when it comes to paying back credit card and which one's better?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things to consider when you're thinking about how you should pay back your credit card. First and foremost is if you're waiting till your statement date, whatever balance on there, that's when the interest kicks in is your next statement date. So if you pay it back before the statement date, then you don't end up paying any interest. So if you pay off the balance in full, if you're just making the minimal payments, it still gets charged the interest month over month on whatever the balance is. Another thing to keep in mind too is how you pay your credit card affects your credit score. And what I mean by that is
Mm,
there's a section of your credit score that's called revolving credit utilization. And essentially, what that means is the balance of all your credit. So whether that's a credit card or a personal line of credit, is part of that utilization. So 100% would mean you maxed out all of those. It's kind of to help kind of build your credit. It's good to keep that below a certain percentage. So We like to say 30%. It might not be reasonable for everybody, but that's a good way to build credit. So in terms of interest and credit building, yeah, it's good to pay off the balance in full, even right after you make a purchase. But if you're unable to do that, at least try to make more than the minimum payment so you pay down the interest a lot quicker. So it ultimately depends on, kind of where you are financially. But in terms of like building credit and saving money, for sure, like paying it off right away is important.
And you touched on the credit score thing. I think credit score is such an important concept to really understand if you want to be financial literate, especially if you plan on applying for loans in the future, right? So very simply, this concept of credit score, like what is it and why is it so important?
Yeah, a credit score is a three-digit number between 300 and 900, which is the max, that demonstrates how likely you are to pay back borrowed funds, which is why it's so important when it comes to applying for loans, because basically your lender will look at that and see your history of how you've paid back a loan. So your credit score plays a big part in that because your credit score is basically calculated based off of how you've been paying your loans. And credit score too, like outside of loans and credit and stuff like that, you use to maybe if you're renting a property, some job applications require them to like pull your credit score, like if you're handling finances for a specific place, like if you're a purchaser or something like that. It could have when you get a cell phone, if you need to go on a payment plan, which is technically a loan, they're going to pull your credit. So outside of just like general loans like mortgages, student loans, all that kind of stuff, your credit plays a huge part in that. If you have like credit that's above average but maybe not great, that also can affect how much you get approved for. So if you're applying for a loan and you need $10,000 and your credit maybe is a little bit below average, you might not get that full $10,000. Also, credit plays a role in your credit interest rate as well, which has to do with kind of risk. So you may get a higher interest rate if your credit score is poor, because it's all about kind of that how likely are you to pay back borrowed funds. So.
And there's like the two sections of for credit score of ways to increase your credit score, but then also very common mistakes that can really impact your net score, like credit score negatively, right? So, what
Mhm.
are some like very common ways that can impact your credit score on a daily basis of how you use your credit card or what other actions you do financially?
Yeah, in terms of like your score going down, there's a couple of things to pay attention to. Once again, that utilization I was talking about earlier. So how much of your credit are you maintaining a balance on or utilizing? Another thing to think of is payment history. So how often do you miss payments? There's a common misconception that if I miss a payment by a day, it's going to tank my credit score. Missing a payment by a day doesn't affect your credit at all. It actually, you might get charged like a fee or additional interest depending on the issuer. But where it starts to affect your credit score is if you miss a payment over 30 days, and then it'll show up on your credit score as a derogatory. In jargony terms, they call it a minor, like a miss of 30 days. And then once you miss 60 days, that's a major. And if it goes beyond that, sometimes potentially it can be sent to collections and things like that, which also ding your credit score. Another thing that can affect your credit, which happened to me, was mistakes, because mistakes do happen. When I graduated from college, I was using a federal student loan, here, a provincial student loan, rather, sorry, which here is called OSAP. And when I graduated, I was in the repayment assistance period where you don't pay for 6 months and then you start making regular payments afterwards. And I checked my credit one time and I was like, whoa, like I have really bad credit. What happened? And it turns out that OSAP made a mistake and sent my loan to collections because they thought I wasn't paying it when I wasn't supposed to be paying it.
Oh
So
my god.
mistakes do happen. Yeah.
Oh
So that's
my
another
god.
thing to kind of think of as well, like, which is why it's important to look at your credit score to make sure there's no mistakes on there. Because they did end up fixing it, but it took 3 months to get it off of my credit report and to get me back into kind of like a healthy credit score. History is super important, like history of good payments, but history with a credit card. So, for example, if I have a credit card at BMO and I've had it for 9 years, it might be good to keep that. Maybe even if I leave BMO, just to have that credit history, because that also kind of affects your score. So, making payments on time, keeping your utilization down, checking your credit regularly to make sure there's no mistakes or fraud on your credit report. These are things that can help pull or help build your credit. One thing that does impact your credit is whenever it's pulled, which kind of seems counterproductive because it's like I'm trying to get credit, it's ruining my credit. But when you pull your credit, like when you apply for a loan, so if you're applying for a credit card, that shows up on your credit report as an inquiry, and that does impact your score. Uh, the weighting of it is a little bit more kind of up in the air because it depends on how many inquiries you have on it. So if I were to apply for a credit card and a house and a car all in the same month, that's going to impact my credit score a lot more than if I were just to apply for a credit card, because now it's showing that maybe I'm a little bit more desperate for credit because I'm making all these kind of inquiries. When you pull your credit
Mm.
yourself, if you were to pull your full credit report, that can ding your credit as well. Luckily, it wasn't this way when I was young. I'm very old right now, but when when I was
Okay.
young, yeah,
Mm.
you had to pull your full credit report to kind of see your credit. Now there's like apps and everything where you can just pull it
Mhm.
so it doesn't affect your score. Like for example, the BMO mobile app, you can just if you're a customer, you can just check your credit score there and it doesn't impact it.
Mhm.
TransUnion and Equifax, they have free credit scores that they can send you without impacting it. But I know there's like various apps. I think one off the top of my head is Credit Karma that I hear a lot, where
Mhm.
you can pull it and it's not fully pulling it, so it's not impacting your credit score. It's more of like a simulated credit score. So
And I think like for me, at least like the couple tips like I personally use for increasing my credit score or trying to get it up there is like I usually try to keep my utilization below 30%, as well
mhm,
as, as you said, if end up applying for another credit card, making sure I don't close any of my credit cards from before, because again, it's as you said, you're erasing all that credit card history, right? But
mhm.
at the same time, like what was really interesting for me was I didn't really understand how credit score was really being calculated. So like for you, how is it really calculated? Like and you say you can check on like these on your app, on a mobile app, it's built in for the customers as well too. But so how's it calculated? Like how do credit bureaus like do they check it all the time? Like it's always monitored, or is it like a very arbitrary, like, oh, we just look at it once every month and call it a day?
Yeah, so as far as I know, and mind you, I've never worked for one of the big credit. So there's two credit reporting agencies in Canada. There's TransUnion and Equifax. And actually, like if I were to check my credit on both of those sites, it might vary.
Mm,
Usually, as long as there's no discrepancy, not by a whole lot. But they usually have like weightings and different things. So weighting on those things I said before, like your credit history, your utilization, they have different weightings where it's calculated. It's usually calculated on a monthly basis. So they
mhm.
are keeping track of loans and stuff, making sure you're making payments on time. As far as like how they do that, I have no idea. I think maybe like, probably financial institutions send them that information because I don't think they're like standing behind me or anything watching everything I
Mhm,
do.
mhm.
But that's usually the calculation is based on, and I don't have the breakdown right in front of me, but it might be like, okay, 30% of your credit score is determined by your credit history, 20%. It's usually a larger weighting for credit history and utilization. So they have like different weightings, TransUnion and Equifax. How they're getting this information, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm
They're
not
just a little
entirely
elf
sure.
there.
Yeah,
They're watching your phones, they're spying
yeah.
on you guys.
You kind of just awakened something in me because I never thought about that, and now I kind of
Mm,
want to go and see how. I imagine it's just financial institutions sending like credit reporting or something
mm.
like that, or that it's integrated in their system, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm gonna
For
do a deep
like
dive
how
after
what
this.
I understand, like how I understand about this is like I actually like went into a little bit because I was really curious, and also I just was very anxious. I was like, what if like every single financial action I make is being judged right now by the credit bureaus, and they're just like, this is above your 30% utilization. It's gonna impact your credit score. We're gonna take it down a few points. And from what I understand, it's so your information is so they always have your information, right? But it's the credit bureaus will check once every month. Like
Mhm.
what your usage is at, like your other information to see if it impacts your credit score or not. And it's not gonna be like, oh, every month on the 14th. It's just like a random day in the month. So it's like a very much like catch you by surprise, always be on your toes. So like that's
Pull
at
it
least
out
how
of
I
a
understand
hat.
it. Yeah, at this point it's like, oh, today's gonna be the 21st, of May. We're gonna check your credit score, but we're gonna
Sean
check your
bought
credit
two
usage.
Nintendo Switch 2s with his credit card
Mhm,
this
yes.
day. Let's pull it.
What a great adult purchase. Wow. It's like one of those things, but that's how at least how I understand it. But
Okay.
anyways, going back on topic, one of the things that you mentioned was like whether there's any fraud on your credit card, or that really impacts your score as well. And then going on the topic of fraud, I definitely think, especially when you are a young adult, you're coming into the world, you have all this like new financial freedom, but you're also very vulnerable to not being really educated, like what are frauds, like which, like how that really impacts your finances or your own like kind of financial literacy as well. So like what are some ways to like protect yourself from fraud, or like what are some very common frauds that actually happen or people become victims to?
Yeah, we're kind of in a new age, which is interesting with like AI, and AI kind of plays a huge part in fraud now. In terms of like how to protect yourself, I think the biggest thing is to just be aware of scams that are going on, so that way you can kind of easily identify them. But there are ways to know how to protect yourself without actually having to delve in and see kind of all the scams that are going out. Like pretty simple things like not giving out any personal information to somebody you don't know or companies you don't know, or publicly available information. Like I'm not going to go on Twitter and put my password in there, and that kind of thing. Make sure you're not giving out your PIN for your card every time you get a debit card. And I know this because when I worked in the branch, like I'd have to give this spiel every time I gave a debit card. It's like, don't give anybody your PIN. Like even if it's like your closest friend or your significant other, like, or your parent, like that PIN is your personal identification number. It's just for you. So don't give anything like that. One-time passcodes, like sometimes people will get calls from places they think is a bank, and they'll be like, "We sent a one-time passcode. Can you read it to me?" That's not
Mm,
anything that anyone would ever ask you to do. Those codes are specifically for logging into your whatever you're logging into. I think the best tip I ever received. So we did a stream last year where the head of our financial crimes unit came on and kind of broke everything down. Is to slow down. A lot of scammers, they prey on insecurities or maybe something that you're afraid of. So make sure if you see anything that's marked urgent, to slow down, read it. Don't respond too quickly with personal or financial information. Take your time. For example, if you get an email, make sure the email URL is from the company you think it is. If you ever want to confirm something, it's okay to double check and call that place and say, "Hey, did you send this out, or is this from you?" Because they'll be able to let you know if it's a scam or not. Don't respond to any unsolicited emails, texts, calls, things like that. Don't
mhm,
click on links from unknown or suspicious sources. So it's kind
mhm,
of like basic things. I think slowing down is super important, and being able to kind of comprehend what you're reading and checking URLs is important. When it comes to
mhm.
like passwords, I always get annoyed with this because it's like, oh, that's not your password. Oh, wait, that's your old password. You need a new password. So you kind of have to make it like overly complicated. But it's
Mm,
important that you do that because those signal strengths are like basically based on how easily it would be to guess your password or to even brute force your password by putting in a bunch of random things. So make sure you're not
mhm.
using like password as a password. It happens. I've been there. We've all been there, I think. We're like, ah, this doesn't matter. Password is the password.
Mhm,
And like, counting things that are easily guessed, that kind of thing. Make sure it's
mhm.
complex, 8 characters long.
Don't
You know,
send a foreign prince money, even if he promises to give you back that money, it's
yeah,
a
because
lie.
maybe it will work every 1 in 10 times,
But
but
what if
don't take that risk.
but what if like the 0.5% chance the prince actually knows me? He actually wants to send me
Yeah.
money and like treat me
It
well.
I think if a prince knows you, they'll meet you in person. They'll have a lawyer, that kind of thing.
But increase your standards, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, cats and dog. You are worth more than just an email. Okay.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah,
besides the
ex-
point. Mm.
exactly. Um, One
Uh-huh.
thing that I think is interesting that the Larry Zelvin, who's the head of financial crimes unit, who came on the stream, he was talking about video games specifically, and something I
Mm.
never thought of because for the longest time, my username, like my username for video games or my gamer tag had a number in it that I use for a bunch of stuff because it was an important date to me, right? So
Oh.
think about that as well. Make sure your gamer
Mm.
tag. I've changed it everywhere, so don't go. Oh, I'm gonna look up Sean and find his pin
Real
number and
quick,
all this
give
kind
me
of
a
stuff.
second. Well, what's your ride ID again? Like, I
uh,
forgot.
But yeah, make sure you don't put any personal information in there
Mhm,
as well, because
mhm,
if fraudsters, they look for anything that they could find, and they'll kind of use it against you. As in terms of common scams like fake websites, sometimes on Instagram, like you'll be scrolling, you'll see like, oh, this is for sale, shop now. You see that at the bottom, you'll be like, it's an ad, I can click it, it's fine. Sometimes those are fake websites.
mhm,
You may get a text or an email of a fake website. You click the link, looks like a real website that you would go to, but they're actually collecting information and taking your financial information and stuff like that.
mhm,
Digital wallet scams. So, we all pay by our phones now. It's super easy and convenient. I always forget my wallet. So, I have my phone on me, nice and easy. Just be careful with that, because people, they do have scanners that they can use. You could receive an email or a text saying something about your wallet, your Apple wallet or your Google wallet, ask you to click a link for information. You don't have to do that. I actually found out because I was concerned. I had Google Pay on my phone. I had to get a new credit card, because
mm,
there was some Bitcoin company in California somehow got my credit card number and tried to make a purchase. Luckily, like the bank was like, no,
mhm,
they're pretty good on like security, so they blocked
mhm,
it. I had to get a new credit card, and I was still able to use my Google Pay. And I was like,
mm,
that's weird. Like GPay is still working. I don't understand. Financial institutions, when you kind of accept that you're going to use GPay or Apple Pay or something, they are notified. So those two things are linked. So whenever you get a new credit card, it's immediately attached to like your GPay and stuff like that. And then
mhm,
there's common things like social media scams that have been around forever. Young people are pretty good at catching these things, and determining when things are fake. But fake advertisements, fake contests, fake job openings. Like maybe you get a job and they're like, I'm going to send you $8,000, send me back $7,000. Like that's a pretty common one.
mhm.
Romance scams, which were pretty big back in the day. I'm not even like it still happens. Usually it's older people. I had somebody come into the bank and say that Janet Jackson was messaging them and they were dating and
Oh,
stuff. And
yeah, that
I
was the
had to be
thing where
like,
they, like, impersonate celebrities, right? And
yeah,
then
yeah,
yeah, there's like, "I'm sending them this money, but they're gonna send it back to me, I promise,"
yeah.
like
They're famous. I know.
mhm,
I met them on Facebook. So yeah,
surely they're
that's why I
real.
think slowing down is important. Like use critical
Mhm,
thinking. Like, is Chris Pratt really messaging me? Saying that he needs money and we're dating.
mhm,
Like, what's the likelihood on that? That he's ever heard of me. So
mhm,
it's always good to double check everything. Use critical
yeah.
thinking. Slow down. That kind of
it's
thing.
it's kind of easy for us to give a lot of these kind of like precautions and say, oh, these are warning, these are like kind of the red flags. But I still think it's still very common for people to make mistakes. We're all human and
Oh,
we're gonna make mistakes
100%.
sometimes. So if you were to actually fall for a fraud and you're a victim of fraud, like what are your next steps? Like how would you approach that with your bank, like with BMO?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. Like depending on what the fraud is, the bank is pretty good at identifying fraud. So if you're coming in and saying, "I need this money to go purchase 20 like Apple gift cards or whatever, like iTunes gift cards," like they're pretty good at determining that. So if for one, if you aren't reporting a fraud, but someone asks you a question like, "What do you need this money for?" Make sure to answer honestly, to make sure that because bankers, they're trained in this thing, like they know. What frauds are going around and stuff like that, so they could potentially help you. If you ever get defrauded in any particular way, go to your, if it's to do with your bank accounts, go to your nearest bank. Make sure to report what's going on. They'll fill out a report for you and kind of walk you through that process. If it's something to do with your credit facility, or maybe like my wallet went missing or something like that, or someone stole a credit card, you can cancel it right in your app. So you press a button, canceled or locked, not canceled. You can cancel it like that. Make sure you call credit facilities and let them know, hey, my credit card was stolen or lost, so that way they can put an alert on your credit report saying that this is a potential fraud thing, call this person at this number. But yeah, usually talk to the institution. So if you got your money stolen through BMO, you would go to BMO and talk to them, fill out a report, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. Like mistakes do happen. And an important thing to think about as well is that they are preying on your insecurities. So it's okay if you do fall for a scam. because
Mhm.
that's what they're doing. They're bad actors. Like they're trying to do it. They're finding new and innovative ways. Earlier, I don't remember the details, so I won't go too much into detail, but I was talking a bit about AI, and this individual is able to make like a Teams call or a meeting at this big company in China using AI, and ended up convincing them to wire a bunch of money. So it's not that,
Mhm.
if you fall for a scam, you're not intelligent. Like
Mhm.
they're getting smarter. There's new scams all the time. They're basically training themselves to trick you. So
Yeah, number spoofing. You also have like the
yeah.
the filters, like so their English sounds more authentic for scammers who don't have a very good English accent or their vocabulary. But yeah, and I guess like the very last topic that I really want to touch on was the topic of investing and also creating savings, right? So there are a couple different investing options or savings options that you can go through, and I know they're all offered at BMO as well. But the very first thing that comes to mind the minute you turn 18, at least like for me, my mom's just like, you gotta open a TFSA, you gotta open a tax-free savings account. I'm just like, what the heck is a tax-free savings account? Like, how does it work? Like, so for someone like me back in that time, how would you explain what a tax-free savings account is and how does that work and why is it important to have one?
Yeah, for sure. So a tax-free savings account is a registered investment account. And what that means is that it's registered with the government for some kind of tax implication. Tax-free savings specifically is registered for the government with the government, and the idea behind it is any interest you earn, so any money you earn in that tax-free account is tax-free. So when you do comes time to do your income tax, you don't have to report it as investment income, and that way you're basically I don't like to say it's free money, but you're not paying income tax on it, right? There's other benefits that are behind registered accounts, which I'll talk about momentarily. um, Tax-free savings, they have limits. So for example, in 2025, the limit for the tax-free savings went up by 7,000. Your particular limit is based on what year you turned 18, so the age of majority in Canada. You'll be able to go on and say, what is my tax free? You could just type it in Google, or you can check your CRA My account to see what your limit is. I'm very old. I have the max limit. So, it's a point of pride, but also like, oh, what is going on here? Having a
No, you're
midlife
you're
crisis.
wise. You're Gandalf, okay? You call
Yeah.
our financial Gandalf at BMO, okay?
Yeah. Tax-free savings actually is a little bit misleading. Tax-free savings account. You can use it as a general savings account, but it's actually an investment account. So think of it as like a kitchen drawer that you pull out. There's lots of different things in there. Tax-free savings, same thing. It's a drawer that can hold different kinds of investments. So you can put it in a savings account within a tax-free. It's not going to earn you much interest. It certainly might not earn you enough interest to even be considered taxable because it has to be over $50.
Mhm.
But you can mix and match. You can split it up. You can put it in GICs, guaranteed investment certificates, mutual funds, ETFs, stocks, bonds, general savings. So there's several different ways that you can invest based on what kind of investor you are. So if you're like someone who likes risk, you could buy stocks in a TFSA. If you're someone who's a little bit more comfortable with someone else managing that kind of thing, you could do mutual funds, ETFs. It all kind of is hyper dependent on the way you save. An important thing, which I don't think is talked about enough when it comes to registered investment accounts in general, and the tax-free savings, is you can put beneficiaries on it. So if I
Mm,
have a regular investment account that's not registered, I can't put beneficiaries on it. So, and this is something, I imagine you're not thinking, I hope you're not thinking about, and a lot of younger people don't think about, but if anything were to happen to you, what happens to that money? So if you have a
mhm,
registered account with like a beneficiary on it, you're basically saying, if anything happens to me, like say I don't have a will or anything, if anything happens to me, this money directly goes to this person. So it's nice and easy with investment accounts, especially as you get older and start kind of planning
mhm,
out your will and your estate and things like that. So there's lots of added benefits to having a tax-free savings. The biggest one being the first two letters, tax-free,
mhm,
because as you kind of get out of school and start paying taxes, like you want to look for every way to kind of bring down your taxable income, and this is one of those ways. So
Mhm. And even like for myself, at least, like my biggest financial advice to my friends are, because we don't really start when you're like really young in your 20s and you just start university, you don't really think about building a savings account. You're thinking about, can I even afford my groceries for the
Yeah.
month, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's still important to have a tax free savings account. And even if you're investing just $10 into it every month, that the earlier you open it and the earlier you start putting money in, you start gaining compound interest over the years, right? And so that is so important. That could be the difference between, later on when you retire, like having $1 million in your TFSA versus having maybe like only 500K, something like that, right? So
Right.
it is definitely like very important on that end. But also for tax free savings account, are you, if let's say for example you take money out of it, you decide, oh, this year I really need to take like $5,000 out of my TFSA for some arbitrary expenditure, right? How does that affect your finances? Does that money now become reportable on your tax forms, or does it become like part of your income, or is it still kind of like, oh, you don't really have to report this anymore?
So the good news is that when you pull money out of a tax-free savings, it's not reportable income because first and foremost, the money that you put in there, you've already paid taxes on. I
Mm.
imagine, unless you're avoiding it for some reason, but but you've already paid taxes on. And
Hmm.
then the investment income that you've made on there is tax-free. So you pull that money out, you don't
Hmm.
pay any income tax on it. The only thing that it might affect you, like financially, is well, a couple things that I can think of. Like if you pulled it out and you were in like an ETF, a mutual fund, or a stock, and it was down. So let's say you invested $5,000, you
Hmm.
were like, I need to pull this out. I have an emergency, and you pulled it out. It was $4,600. You just realize that loss, so you can't recoup that money
Hmm.
unless you end up reinvesting in something else or whatever. But you just realized the loss. On top of that, too, like say I maxed out my tax-free savings and then I pulled out $5,000. I am not able to recontribute that $5,000 and get that contribution room back until next
Hmm.
year. So you kind
Yeah.
of lose out on the compound interest, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's
So,
such a good point. Hmm.
but in terms of like, it doesn't show up as taxable income. There are accounts where if you pull money out of them, they are taxable income. Things like RRSPs, retirement registered retirement savings plans. But that's because the tax benefit on that is different. It gives you a tax deferral, which means you don't pay tax on that money until you pull it out. So the tax free savings doesn't do that. So you should be in the
Hmm.
clear. Um, but yeah, you could potentially realize a loss or
Hmm.
miss out on that contribution room. But other than that, you should be in the clear tax wise.
And the other savings account that's actually got introduced around, I believe, 2 to 3 years ago, was actually the first home savings account. So how does that differ from your TFSA, and like, um, what is it really?
Yeah, so a first home savings account is once again registered investment account. It is an amalgamation between the tax-free savings account and the RRSP, the registered retirement savings account. So the money that's in there, the any growth that's on it is tax-free. So you don't pay money taxes on that money. Tiny little asterisks here, which I'll talk about in a second. Uh, and also, any money that you put into it is tax deferred. So let's say I put in the max contribution for a year, which is $8,000 for everybody. Uh, I put in that max contribution. I do not have to pay income tax on that $8,000. So you get a receipt when it comes time to tax time. You give your tax person that receipt, or if you do it yourself, you input it $8,000 into my FHSA. I don't have to pay taxes on that now. Cool.
Hmm.
The FHSA is specifically designed for first time home buyers to purchase a house. I actually purchased a house last year using this because it had just come out, and I was like,
Hmm.
I'm taking full advantage of this because I save money on taxes and I have additional money to kind of put towards closing costs and stuff like that. So it's an
Hmm.
amalgamation of those two things. The only stipulation, that little asterisk I talked about earlier, is that if I pull that money out for anything else other than buying a house, I pay tax on it. I pay income
Hmm.
tax and then I pay investment tax as well. So for the investment income, as long as you use it to purchase a house, so you have to be a first time home buyer, you're in the clear. Another important thing to remember is the contribution room. So it's $8,000 a year. You can carry it forward. So what I mean by that is if I opened it this year, didn't contribute the $8,000, I can carry it to next year and make a contribution of $16,000 if you have that laying around. I don't have that laying around. I buy action figures and stuff, but
Hmm.
if you have that laying around, you can make that contribution. You can only carry forward a max of $8,000 a year, so it caps out at 16,000. So if I don't make a contribution this year and I don't make a contribution next year, that doesn't mean it keeps going up by 8,000. It'll
Hmm.
stay at the max, which is 16,000, and it
Hmm.
has a lifetime contribution of, I believe, 40,000. So,
Yeah.
but it's a good tool to use if you are looking to purchase a house, because as we all know, houses have become kind of a luxury. They're very expensive, and building a down payment is tricky. So this account is kind of
Hmm.
for that very reason to purchase a house. So
For at least like younger if you're like in your 20s, like the at least like the financial advice that I personally follow is try to max out your TFSA first, because if you were to pull out anything from that to pay for not a house, then you can still do it. It won't be taxable. I believe it's a 15-year limit from the day you open your account for
yeah,
FHSA. So you'll have 15 years to max that out. So after that 15 years, it's gone. If you don't end up using that money to buy a house, though, I believe that it's transferable into your RRSP, right?
that's
So
correct.
it,
Yeah,
mhm.
that's
So that
awesome. You know
is,
your stuff. That's
I,
amazing.
I
I
told
love it.
you, financial, like personal finance is my little hobby. I gotta be financial literate. What can I say? Also,
It's
it's a
fun.
cultural thing. So got
Gotta have you on
look at,
BMO next level. You
I
can
know,
teach
just
me a few
gotta
things.
just a little hair flip. What can I say? Anyways,
That's awesome.
we're closing out this panel actually. So my final closing question, you talked about you had a lot of mistakes that you made when you're younger, which is totally fair, by the way. We're all human. We all make mistakes, okay? So if you were
Yeah.
to give one piece of financial advice to your younger self 10 years ago, what would it be?
There's a story I always tell about. I was talking about OSAP earlier, my provincial student loan, and I guess it kind of worked out in the long run. But I used that money, part of that money, to buy a PS4, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm still paying back my student loan. So the one advice would be not to buy the PS4. Although I love The Last of Us and Fallout 4, so I'm going to skip that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to save. I remember in high school, I had no expenses. I had a cell phone, that was it, and I was working two jobs, and I was making a ton of money, and it just was out the
Wow.
window. Yeah, so because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that financial literacy piece. Like I didn't understand. I always tell my wife like, "Oh, that's future Sean's problem." And that was very much the attitude I had when I was in high school. So I would give the advice to me to save, to prepare yourself, because things happen out of your control when you get older. Your goals and your ideas change as much as when you're young. You think, yeah, this is the way. Like I never wanted to get married or have kids or buy a house. I am now married. I'm a father. I own a house. So it changes,
My,
right?
how's the
It goes
turns
in.
have table?
Yeah, exactly. So saving is super important.
Hmm. And yeah, I think at least like on my end, at least I'm still very, very young. I'm currently 20. How old am I? I don't even know. I'm 22 years old, 23 years old, I believe. And as I start paying my student loans, one of the advice I give to people who are just starting to pay out their student loans too is you're actually able to target which student loans you want to focus on first. So if you have the capital, you're able to clear out your provincial student loans, which is the ones that would have your interest rate on. Usually, all federal loans are interest free, so you can just kind of slowly
Mhm.
and chip away at it. So if you're able to, then you want to pay off your provincial student loans first, but you do have to like write a check and then write a letter and send it to the ministry. So they say like, oh, this money is specifically only to pay off all of my um, provincial student loans, and then you slowly work at your federal one, right? So that is definitely some advice I would give to people. But of course, student loans is such a broad topic, and it's definitely a really good topic for those of you guys interested to talk about BMO Next Level, as Sean will always be here to give you guys that financial advice. But yeah, we're going to be closing out this pound stew. So I just want to thank our sponsors. Of course, we got our cold title sponsor, BMO, right here. So BMO is actually running a contest right now for CIE participants. There is a QR code, and you just have to type in under the commands, it's going to be exclamation mark CONTES, and complete the form there. And you meet with a BMO representative, and you can be entered to win a one of five $20 digital Steam gift card. BMO also has banks and accounts borrowing options for university and college students to enter today, which connects to that BMO student banking, right? So, to help to focus on what's important, BMO has checking and savings account, credit cards, and borrowing options designed for students. Plus, get $125 in cash and 6 months of Domino's pizzas. We know the students, we love our pizza, okay? With BMO's current student offers. So make sure to check them out. Of course, there's terms and conditions that apply. And one more thing is that BMO Next Level Twitch we kept talking about. So that Twitch channel is a BMO NXTLVL. It is a Twitch channel and Discord server dedicated to helping you level up not only in game, but also in your personal finances. So join our lovely panelist, aka Sean Frame, BMO's gaming relations specialist, as he plays through your favorite titles while giving some detailed walkthroughs on financial topics and matters to you. So make sure to check them out. It's BMO NXTLVL on Twitch, as well as you can take a look at their Twitch command, our Twitch command as well, which is your exclamation mark BMO NXT LVL. We also like to take the time to also thank our charity sponsors, which is Strawberry and Egg. They are a new local business located in Vancouver, BC, that specializes in making large video game and anime themed plushies. They also make smaller items like keychains, headphone accessories, and flower bouquets, and everything is of course 100% handmade. So make sure you take a look at them. Look out for them, and it's 15% off for all items if you say CAE if they sent you. Our other co-title sponsor, our other charity show sponsor is Solaris, which is the esports team based in Vancouver, BC, and they have Marvel Rivals and Overwatch competitions as well. So make sure to check them out. Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us, and thank you so much
Yeah,
for our
thanks for having me.
sponsors. It's always been a lovely pleasure, and of course, we will actually be seeing you guys in roughly half an hour, as the next panel is going to be "You've Been Served: An Introduction to Esports Law." It's going to happen at
Ooh.
2 p.m. PST and 5 p.m. EST, and I'll be there again. I am hosting that as well. So if you guys are interested in those topics, make sure to come out and show some support and get some information while you're at it. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to have you, Sean. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great chatting with you.
It was great. And again, I've been Zlion. I was your host for today, and we'll see you later. Bye bye.